Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life.
Pat?
Brenda, how are you, mate?
Good.
It's been like about 15 minutes since I spoke to you last.
Yeah, well, we're catching up, I guess, because we haven't. You've been away, and I've found out you're away next week as well.
We're screwing up November as well, aren't we? You got that?
Yeah. Just pouring the coffee, which I'll do in front of the mic.
So what we thought we'd do is...
Hang on. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I don't know if it's strong enough, because I only just did that real fast.
I was going to say, it looks a bit weak over the video.
A little bit. So. We've got a guest. It's a guest.
Oh, we do have a guest, and I've got my computer making noises.
Hello, guest. How are you?
Are we going to introduce the guest before he talks, even though he's talked already?
Hang on, let's see if people can guess who it is. Would you like to give us a clue? Or give us a clue as to who you may be without giving.
Okay, so the clue is I'm back.
Back.
I spoke to you, I think, 5 months ago, and I am now out of the country.
All right, they got to get it now.
Officially an expat.
Officially, our most appeared guest.
Is it?
I would think so.
Well, this is the third.
Is anybody else done three?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's probably
There you go, mate. Top of the table.
Congratulations,
Owen.
That's an honour.
How are you, sir?
Owen or beef
Very
back
well.
better?
Yeah, very well. I've been in El Salvador now for 2 weeks, and so far so good.
I thought you'd been gone for a while.
So
Oh man, the pack up just took ages. Like was a huge job. It was months of pack up because I had the farm and I sold the farm and had to rehome all the livestock and all of that stuff.
Let's do a quick refresh, shall we?
Yeah,
Brenda, go on.
Oh well, just saying. So Owen has. Oh, we can call you Owen. You did say Owen, didn't you?
Yeah.
You're easy going, unfortunately.
Our first, well, not meeting because we met at Bush Bashers, but our first pod was on your awesome farm, which was a great tour. Had the best brisket I've ever had.
Oh, that was good, yeah.
Still waiting for your mum's recipe, but that's fine.
That was that for good. Yeah,
it was so
good.
good.
I just remembered that.
So good. Yeah. And now you've basically sold the farm, packed up, and moved to El Salvador. Living the dream. How good's that?
Yeah, I kind of took like the exactly opposite path, which is sort of weird. I was settling in for the winter and pretty much prepping. Had the generator and the fuel stored and the beef cattle and dog and cat, and life was good. But having visited El Salvador for a month back in May and June, I pretty much as soon as I landed back in Sydney, I knew I didn't really want to be back in Australia.
Yep.
But it was really hard to make the decision though. Like I kind of didn't even end up making the decision. I was so uncertain about it that I just ended up saying, oh, well, fuck it, I'll just do it and see how it goes. But
do you know what's happened there?
What?
I'm in the dark now.
Oh yeah, there we go. Sorry, there we go. I thought it was only me that was seeing just a black screen. I thought you could see him. I was like, you've got some.
I could see.
Sorry, just adjusting my studio situation here. I'm in my little studio apartment in San Salvador, in an area of San Salvador called Colonia Escalon, which is one of the nicer areas.
Cool.
But I'm outside one of the. I'm not in a sort of a secure complex or anything like a quite common here. I'm just in a normal house on a normal street. Although this normal street is 4 doors down from President Bukele's mother's house, which is pretty funny.
No way.
So I've got my own.
How did you find that out?
Team of security guys. Just I step out the front in the morning, and there's always at least 4 guys with guns. And,
that's probably good for you, though.
Visitors. No, it's good. Yeah, it's cool. I'm like, buenos dias, and.
So you can't take us some flowers or anything like that?
And I could, I suppose. I generally kind of, when I'm walking past the guys with the guns, I just sort of don't make any sudden movements and say good morning and leave it at that. I guess they probably scoped me out, but I don't know. But yeah, so it's I've got a little studio apartment here, which I found on Airbnb, and settling in here, got a bicycle and a motorcycle and making some friends in San Salvador. So far so good.
I assume you're just renting the place. You're just sort of scoping everything out for a little while, right?
Yeah, this is an Airbnb, and I might rent directly for an extra couple of months.
Yep.
Okay.
It's not super cheap, the rent. Like, it's $1,000 a month USD, so $1,500 a month, so 400 Australian a week or something. So it's not super cheap, but
is it hard to find a rental?
You live next door to the president's mum, but
yeah, that's true.
it's not that fancy, this place. It's kind of it's fine, but it's not very fancy, and the street's not that fancy. It's hard to find rentals.
Yeah.
Pretty much impossible down at Bitcoin Beach, and difficult. The easiest way seems to be starting on Airbnb and then getting a monthly discount if you can, which a lot of them do offer, and then going direct or then asking around through agents.
Let's go back.
They are available, but they're usually around the $1,000 to $2,000 US a month is the usual going rate in San Salvador in the nicer areas.
Yeah, cool. Let's go back to the process, I guess, for you of selling and packing up the farm.
Well, can I go just before that? When you went over there to do your original scope, which was like beginning of this year, right? Sometime?
May. Yeah.
May. Oh, so it was when we were speaking to you, right? Okay, so it was May.
Yeah.
Was it your intention at that point? I forget. Was it? I mean, did you genuinely think, I'm going to move there? I'm just going to go and see what it's like, and I'm going to move there, or what were you actually thinking? And then go to.
It was definitely a scoping mission. Yeah, it was definitely a reconnaissance mission. I was totally checking it out. And the last week of that 4-week stay, I stayed in the city in an Airbnb and rented a car and tried to live sort of how I would live if I lived here to experience that. Yeah, but it wasn't obvious to me whether I would move, but just the sinking feeling when I landed back in Sydney was remarkable. But then, of course, things got better in Australia. That made it kind of confusing. Like the last couple of months in Australia, things feel normal again. Yeah. And cafes are opening and gigs are happening. And so that almost made it harder. Like life's really good in Australia right now.
Yeah, when you compare it around the world, right? When you look at, I don't know if you look at inflation numbers all over the world, Australia's quite near the bottom of that table. It's not fun. It's still like 5 point something, 6 point something officially CPI, but
even the COVID thing. Like, so I saw a thing with Qatar was saying that Australia is now on the list of stuff that has kind of basically dropped all the masks and all that kind of stuff. Entry into the country, you don't need to do anything.
Yep.
But the US, you still do.
Yeah, so I just left the country and came back, and for all that we had to.
Did you have to provide a test and stuff for South Africa?
Well, we were told we were going to from South Africa to Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe was meant to still be tighter, but nothing was actually asked of us.
Yeah, it's all kind of.
It's all just
it's officially,
that's the rules,
there,
but
but
it's
then
not happening. The
yeah,
locals
exactly.
on the ground don't care.
No.
But,
and it's weird that for the US, they're still requiring if you're a foreigner going through the US, and that includes transiting, you have to be double vaxxed. And they're sort of on their own now with that. It's weird, even though the CDC over there aren't recommending it anymore, or aren't saying that there's any. They're saying that there's no difference between vaxxed and unvaxxed. Yet, for the travel requirement's still there. So technically, it's still difficult for unvaccinated travelers to come to El Salvador because you have to transit through the US, unless you go through Mexico. And now, as of like next week, there are direct flights from Madrid to San Salvador opening up. Yeah. So there are more options for Europeans. And
do you think there's some? Do you think there's just incompetence or just mistakes, or do you think there's a ulterior motive there in the US in terms of blocking travel? Is there any benefit? I'm just looking for.
I don't know why they're hanging on to that. It seems weird, but none of it's been logical for a long time.
Right.
But like, could it potentially be? I mean, you're not stopping the immigration problem on the Mexican border by doing it because people.
Oh no, there's like 2 million people went through the border this year in the US. 2 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they didn't check their vaccine passes.
Coming off a flight,
Well, they actually don't check in the US either. So the problem is just getting on the plane in Australia, as Australians tend to. Oh. Australians are just often such snobby sorts that they still check and enforce that at check-in in Australia, but coming through into the US, they don't check. I mean, I think all around the world they don't check anymore. It's just so I assume they'll drop that soon. But
interesting.
Okay, I want to go. I want to go to the farm. So, was that hard for you to actually officially go? All right, I'm letting go of this. All this work that I've put into it, all the plans that I had. You showed us all this stuff that you were going to do, or was it also a relief to kind of offload that responsibility? You know what I mean?
Totally, especially the livestock. Yeah, it was both. And what made it a lot easier was the fact the value of the property went stupidly upwards.
Yes.
And at the same time, Bitcoin went downwards. So that made it, from a financial point of view, it was sort of it seemed almost like an obvious decision. So there was that. But
you're a genius.
I had already achieved a lot of the plans, like the tree planting.
Yep.
I planted 1,000 trees and I did the fencing and I built the dam and the cattle was running well. And I'm really pleased that the new owner is going to keep running the same cattle with the same couple that I was working with on the cattle. So they've still got their cattle there. So that's fantastic. And the dog stayed. Geordie's still at the farm.
Easy.
That was the
with the new owner.
He's
it really worked out well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What about your mum? Do you want to talk about where she is or what she's doing, or?
She's just still in Australia, and she's looking forward to coming over here for a visit.
Awesome.
So we've got to work that out. It's it's a long trip. So from Australia, it's like just a very long way. But there's options for staying overnight if you want to break up the trip. So this is relevant. So my mum will probably break up her trip a bit. You can stay overnight in Fiji.
You could call her directly. You don't have to do it through our podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
So you can stay overnight in Fiji, or you can stay overnight in Hawaii, and if you want, and you can stay overnight in LA. So you can break the trip up that way. So she's going to come over pretty soon, just as soon as I'm settled in.
Was it hard to say goodbye to the dog? I would have found that hard.
Yeah, man. Oh,
he's a beautiful dog.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, it's just this.
We were only there for a day.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he's an especially good dog. No, but friends and family and
friends and family.
Dog and cat, and it's really. I mean, it seems to me like you worry more about how much you're going to miss. Well, I do anyway. Sort of worry more about how much you're going to miss someone or some pet than when it's actually done. It's sort of okay, but of course, the trade-offs are interesting, and there's a lot of things I miss, but
so I'm
pretty well
I'm
here.
Guessing you're not going to be back for Murra.
No, sorry, I will miss that. I do not want to do that long journey again anytime soon. It's just exhausting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the guy's name. He does the expat money guy. He was on Daniel's show recently.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I only found him recently.
I forgot the guy's name. It'll come back to me.
But the Expat Money Show is the podcast. Yeah, I can't remember his name either.
Was that Daniel's last pod?
No, I don't know. Probably not. I've probably been sitting on my to-do list for a while. But oh God. So anyway, my question is: are you seeing yourself as a nomad now, or like are you seeing yourself as a guy who's moving to El Salvador?
Yeah, no, expat, absolutely. And I think I must have listened to the same episode with that fellow because I found it really interesting how he made the distinction between nomad and expat. And it was obvious to me when I listened to that I really fit into the category of expat. I actually like having a base. I've got my bikes and my riding gear and bits and pieces. I want to run a Bitcoin node. It's good to have a base for me. So I'm not a nomad, but I am, for the first time in my life, living the sort of an expat life.
Would you consider, if it was financially possible, I appreciate this becomes financially restrictive, but if you had multiple passports and multiple locations?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, passports, I want to have another base in Thailand, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to do it. So residency here is my next step, and then I'm going to try to also have a residency in Thailand if I can. Okay. So finish up my tax residency in Australia, because in Australia, tax residency is different to residency. So there's I need to do a lot more homework on the tax residency side of stuff. There are pros and cons. I might actually keep my Australian tax residency, but as I understand it here with, I'm not an expert, so I might get some of this wrong, but I think they call it territorial tax rules in El Salvador for overseas earned income is not taxable in El Salvador. So even if I'm still working for my clients in Australia, and if I'm not an Australian tax resident, then I don't pay tax in Australia and I don't pay tax here.
Nice.
And I might be wrong about that, but that's my understanding at this stage. So I've got to do a lot more homework on sort of optimizing that. And that's obviously a very common topic of discussion among the expats here.
Yeah.
I bet it is, yeah.
And these expats that I'm meeting are from all around the world, are freedom-oriented people, and sometimes, well, almost always like really smart people and really diverse.
And mostly
really
Bitcoiners?
Yeah. So last time I came, there were also just a lot of COVID refugees, but now it's kind of more Bitcoiners that
Am I
are
right in
coming
saying
and
that when
going.
you went to El Zonte, you found that it was sort of half of them were Bitcoiners, half of them were surfers, but then when you were in San Salvador, it wasn't so much a Bitcoin thing at all. Is that not what you said back then?
I remember saying, and I think it's probably still the case down in Zonte and El Tunco as well, that it's probably half surfers and Bitcoiners. I'm not sure what I said about San Salvador then, but now the expats that I'm meeting are all Bitcoiners.
Interesting. So
Very
does that feel like more since you were last there, or is it just that you're there sort of for a different reason now, and you're doing different things?
Yeah, I only had a week in the city last time, and I was focused on getting. I didn't reach out to many Bitcoiners and other expats in that week that I was in San Salvador last time. This time I'm trying to sort of make friends here, so it skews the result. So I'm just only meeting other expat Bitcoiners at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. What I'm trying to get at, I guess, is you said that rentals are difficult in Zonte. So if that's or El Tunca, and if that's the case, then people are going to start to feed elsewhere to try and look for somewhere to stay, and maybe a natural place would be San Salvador. And then,
well, for me, San Salvador is my preference. There are a few reasons. One is the climate. Like, it's much cooler up here. So I don't know what the elevation is. I think it's around 800 meters. So you just get this cool breeze. It's just mid-20. It's the perfect climate. I missed the wet season. So I was here at the end of the dry season, and now I'm back at the end of the wet season. So I conveniently missed where it just rains every day for months. But year-round in San Salvador, it's like mid and high 20s, and you get a cool breeze almost every day. Whereas down at Bitcoin Beach and the whole coastline, it's a lot hotter. It's like 30s, mid 30s frequently. So the climate's a lot nicer in San Salvador. It's still only 40 minutes. Well, it's less than half an hour to the beach and directly south to the area called La Libertad, where there's a really good fish market and a port and a little town, and then you have to, from La Libertad, you then drive west another sort of 20 minutes to El Zonte. So it's kind of 40, 50 minutes to El Zonte. So it's not that far. But if you're using Ubers only, it's kind of a bit expensive to go that far. So I've only been down there once, actually, in the last 2 weeks for a meetup. But yeah, San Salvador has a much nicer climate and all of the conveniences that you don't have in El Zonte, like everything you need here. It's a modern city. It's easy to get around. Everything you need is here. It's perfectly safe. It's like a great city to live in, even without the Bitcoin. And I haven't been an expat before, so maybe there are better cities in Eastern Europe and the United States and wherever. But as far as it's very small, so it's kind of like a big town. It's really easy to get around. I bought a mountain bike and I just cycle everywhere, and it's fine. They're building all these new bike paths, and so there's hardware stores and convenience stores and supermarkets, and you can get everything you need here. Down at the beach, you pretty much have to eat out. There's no supermarket down at El Zonte. You can get food delivered, and there's a produce truck that comes around, but it's kind of difficult, not to mention totally unreliable electricity and internet. So there's a lot going for San Salvador. But I'd like to get a car so I can easily get down to El Zonte and even do sort of overnight trips down there, go down for a meetup and stay the night at a hotel and come back and stuff like that. I plan to do that.
So, sorry, aside from the rental kind of cost, what's the general kind of cost of living there? Like, so fuel, food?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's not as cheap as Asia. It's not as cheap as Thailand or Bali. Some things are more expensive, but most things are less expensive. Fuel is about 30% cheaper than Australia.
Okay.
I think it's like $4.10 a gallon. So I think that works out like 30% cheaper. Rental, yeah, I mean, for a place like this in Sydney, it would depend where you were. Like, you could pay up to $1,000 Australian dollars, I guess, a week for this place, and it's $1,000 US dollars a month here. So, but rent something that's not heaps cheaper. It's probably still half the price, or maybe 50% cheaper, maybe than Sydney. Food is probably about half the price, and depending on what you want, like beef. If you want good quality beef, it's not really any cheaper. It's about the same. And then, like the motorcycles that I like are a lot more expensive here, unfortunately, because they have big tariffs. Okay. So, yeah, I think it's still a lot cheaper. So you were mentioning before that inflation's kind of not too bad in Australia yet or at the moment. Which I agree with, but yeah, the baseline though, like the baseline was already pretty bad in Australia. It's a very expensive place to live, and the baseline here is really low. Like if you wanted to live cheaply here, you could live really cheaply if you just wanted to eat the pussies, and if you were happy to do share accommodation or live in a rural area or in a less nice part of San Salvador, then you could pay half the rent that I'm paying. Yeah, so it's definitely cheaper, but it's not super cheap. You go out to a restaurant, it might be similar to going out to a restaurant, sort of say where you live in a regional area of Australia.
Okay. Are you paying for most things in Bitcoin, or is kind of Gresham's Law kicking in for you?
50-50. It's sometimes a hassle. It depends. It's so funny. You ask, can I pay with Bitcoin? And they'll sometimes go, and they'll look at an iPad over in the distance, and they'll go, no, because my Spanish is not very good.
Legally, they have to offer it, right? But it's
not enforced at all.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's definitely not enforced at all. That requirement to accept it. So it's about 50-50, and depending how I'm feeling, I don't always ask. I should do more. I'm trying to always ask. And sometimes they laugh, or sometimes it's just too much of a hassle. And because my Spanish is not very good at all, although it's getting better every day, I can't then have the conversation about it. I kind of just go, okay, well, I'll pay cash then, whatever. It's fine. But interestingly, recently, like one of the locals here, she's adopting Bitcoin. The conference is coming up, which I'm really excited about. So we went out for a meal, and she just doesn't take no for an answer. She speaks perfect Spanish, so she says to the shop, she's like, "Oh, we only have Bitcoin."
Yeah, right. Okay.
And it always works. They make it happen. They're like, "Oh, okay, we've got to go get the iPad. We've got to log in. We've got to talk to that staff member who knows how to do it." And then we went through the process and we showed them how to do it. And because it's kind of, it's a bit tricky. It's even just using Chivo Wallet, for instance, the Chivo Wallet interface on the iPad. Initially, the first QR code it shows you by default is dollars. It's for doing a dollars transaction from Chivo to Chivo. So you've got to press Bitcoin and then type it in at a dollar amount. And then the Bitcoin on-chain QR code comes up. So then you've got to click Lightning.
Can I go back on that? So
yeah.
If you got $5 in your account, your Chivo account, and you want to send that $5 to their Chivo account, you can do that. It's like a bank transfer within the Chivo wallet.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it in the back end, but it's the default QR code for Chivo to Chivo payments is a dollar QR code. It's not a Bitcoin QR code.
But you would still be scanning a QR code with the Chivo wallet. It would just be dollar to dollar. that
It's
what you're
Chivo only, and it's just some sort of ledger entry that the government is doing. Yeah.
Wow. Hope somebody's maintaining that ledger well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it mostly?
So
Is it all on-chain transactions? Like, is there much Lightning kind of?
no, mostly Lightning.
Oh, mostly
Absolutely,
Lightning.
mostly
Okay.
Lightning. Yeah. So
There's got to be.
but it depends. And the Chivo wallet. So, but it's not even the majority anymore because it's kind of so bad that most vendors don't use Chivo. If they're using Bitcoin, they'll actually be using Moon Wallet or Wallet of Satoshi or Bitcoin Beach Wallet, and they're probably the three. I think they're kind of the three best now. From my point of view and from functionality locally. Like I was using Blue Wallet last time I was here, but I was getting a lot of failed payments, and it's actually just really expensive to fund a Lightning channel in Blue Wallet. It's like 3,000 sats or something by default. So Moon Wallet's really convenient, seems to work well. So it's probably maybe 50%, or it's the shops that are sort of umming and ahhing about accepting Bitcoin, they'll be the ones that are using Chivo because they're not very experienced with it, and they don't really want to do it, but it's the government one that they've got. And the Chivo accounts are linked to the National Tax Identification Number, the NIT. And everyone who's got an NIT basically has a bank account with the government through Chivo. And it's dollar and Bitcoin denominated. But this is my understanding. I think I've got it roughly right. So you can actually send Bitcoin to someone's NIT, which is the equivalent in Australia of a TFN, a tax file number.
Yeah.
Just to their NIT. You don't need a QR code or anything. You can just press send in Chivo to someone's NIT. And I've got an NIT. You can go to the Ministry for Finance and try to communicate with them for an hour or two, and it costs you $2 and you can get an NIT. So you have a tax number. But yeah, so the Chivo wallet by default comes up in dollars. Then you can change it to Bitcoin, and then it's an on-chain. But obviously the problem with doing on-chain at point of sale is that you might have to wait for a confirmation. But in Chivo, if you disable RBF on the wallet that you're sending from, it'll accept zero confirmations.
Oh.
What's
So you can do an on-chain.
RBF? Oh,
Replaced by fee.
Yeah,
so the reason you might have to wait at a merchant for a confirmation is that you might do a double spend. And get away with a free cup of coffee or whatever. Like it's unlikely. Some places will just let you do it. But Chivo specifically will, if it's a replaced by fee transaction, which is kind of basically allowing a double spend it's a transaction that sort of allows a fee bump. So if you turn off allow fee bump in Blue Wallet, or if you turn off RBF in Samurai or whatever other wallet you're using, send, you can do an on-chain zero conf and pay that way. And that sometimes is necessary because the point of sale devices at the supermarket are these old computer screens that have very low resolution. They don't have enough resolution for a Lightning QR code. So there are all these little problems, which is understandable. And you don't learn about them until you try each time. But all of the Lightning payments I've done have actually worked fine, including Chivo here. But it's good to see a lot of people using Bitcoin Beach Wallet, which is fantastic. And Wallet of Satoshi, and even at a motorcycle shop the other day, I paid for some bits and pieces, and she didn't know how to use Bitcoin, but her boss sent to her by WhatsApp the Lightning invoice, which I then scanned and paid her boss directly while I was there. So yeah, it's about 50-50, I think.
It's amazing, like just by, ultimately it's just by necessity. If you have a shop and you have a product and you want to sell it and somebody wants to buy it, you're going to work it, and the only way that they're going to buy it is by paying in Bitcoin. You're going to work it out, right? And it even seems to me just since whatever it was, 5 months since we spoke, like more people are finding their way to the other apps that are working a bit more often or more accurately or whatever it is. And that's just totally obvious, right? If something's a pain in the ass and you work out something and you hear that something's better, you give it a try, and if it's better, you stick with it, right? That's just logical.
Yeah.
So it seems that people are just making the logical. It's just going to be, there's going to be painful steps. Well, you have to have a little bit of pain in order to get to the next step, I guess. And then
no pain, no gain.
And that's why it is worth sort of pushing them on it a little bit. But my Spanish is not good enough to often do that. But the other thing about a point of sale here, like point of sale at every merchant here is a hassle, regardless of what you're paying with. It's the weirdest thing. It's like different credit cards do and don't work. They have this other payment system that's another type of QR code as well. You can get stuck just like in the queue at the supermarket for 15 minutes while they try to do one damn transaction. I'm not talking about a Bitcoin one, just for some reason, someone's trying to pay with a gift card plus some cash plus a credit card, and the credit card doesn't work. And so,
so cash is still king.
often, US dollar cash, and they have coins like US $1 coins here, which I'd never seen before.
Wow.
US coin.
So yeah, cash is good. It's if you're running out of other options, then it's the way to go. But yeah, Bitcoin will end up like when they know what they're doing, and it's just lightning to lightning. If it's Moon Wallet to Moon Wallet, or Moon Wallet to Wallet of Satoshi, or Moon Wallet to Bitcoin Beach Wallet, it's just like instant. It's fantastic. It's so easy, and people are stuffing around trying to get their credit card to work for 10 minutes, and you just breeze through. So that's good.
What a great selling point though, like for Lightning. If they're in a shop waiting 15 minutes to use a credit card or whatever, and just go, well, hey, look at this.
Yeah.
This is your better option.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fees. I mean, they get screwed on fees. The bank fees are like significant. I think, well, they are everywhere. They're something like 3% to do a credit card transaction. So Lightning's way better. Yeah.
I remember Greg Foss talking about that to do with. So he has a chain of pubs in Canada. Or he's like, an investor in a chain of pubs in Canada, and he said something like they operate really good they're like 15% margins or something, and their fees are whatever they were, sort of between 2 and 3 taking card transactions. But I think it was to do with his relationship with Ibex Mercado, and for people there, because of the additional risk, I guess, for maybe Visa or MasterCard, their fees were like 6 or 7%.
Oh.
So if you were running a good business that's operating on sort of 15% margin, taking half of your money.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah. So if you can all of a sudden bring in a Lightning terminal at your point of sale, and then you're effectively paying nothing, all of a sudden you can maybe almost double your profit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once businesses work that out, and once the customers have Bitcoin and are willing to spend it, I mean, that's just, you don't need a salesman at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and Ibex Mercado do a great job. Their point of sale stuff always seems to work really well. It's really fast. Like it's custodial. Not many people are actually running Lightning nodes. But Ibex and Galloy, which is Bitcoin Beach Wallet, they're probably processing, and Chivo. And it's no surprise that Chivo's the worst one. Of course, it's the government one. Like, what would you expect? What else would you expect? And it's actually pretty good now. It's actually working pretty well, better than last time I was here.
Yeah. So back to the expat stuff. Are you finding that that it's a lot of single people or couples, or are there families doing it, Owen, or what
Unfortunately, mostly couples.
Oh, really?
Unfortunately for me.
It depends on your thing.
If that's what you're into. Mostly couples and families. Yeah, so there are several families here from all around the world, and several couples that some I met last time here in May that are still here down in Bitcoin Beach in El Zonte. But yeah, young families and young couples mostly.
Have Max and Stacey actually officially moved to El Salvador?
I think so. They're usually in San Salvador, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't met them yet, but yeah, they'll be at the conference, which is only a couple of weeks away, Adopting Bitcoin.
Yeah.
The organizer of Adopting Bitcoin said to me that she said, I guarantee it'll be the most chilled out conference ever. And I said, no, Bitcoin Bush Bash is the most chilled out conference ever. We organised the schedule on the day that we arrived. But anyway, so mostly couples and families. Hey, I remembered, speaking of expats, I remembered the name of that guy, the Expat Money Show guy. It's Michael Thorup, or Mikkel.
Yes.
Thorup.
Yes, that's him, Mikkel Thorup, yeah. Really interesting. And he was going through all sorts of things like birth tourism and all sorts. Was that the one you were listening to? He was
That's fascinating. Yeah, you have a baby in Mexico, and then the baby's automatically a Mexican citizen, and then the parents can get Mexican citizenship.
Yeah, and then some
people just get horrified at the idea, but actually, like the healthcare systems in Central America, not that bad, really. Like having babies is something that everyone in the world does, and the hospitals here are not. But most of the expats here don't have independent health insurance. They just use the local system, and they often just don't charge you. Or if they do, it's just stuff. It's very cheap. So I was thinking about trying to get some good sort of health cover, but every expat I've spoken to is like, oh no, don't bother. The local system's good.
So if
and free or very cheap.
I don't want to get personal about it, but like if you had to go to a doctor, if you had a issue, or if you have anything, like I'm asthmatic, I need to get inhalers. Use me as an example, right? If I had to do that, what would practically happen?
I just tried a pharmacy. I think that generally the rules and regulations are so fewer that they'll just look after you, and especially as a gringo, like it's something that Doug Casey has said a few times. Doug Casey, you sometimes listen to him?
I don't know who that is.
No, I don't know the name at all. But
Doug Casey, check him out. He's kind of like elderly now, but he's sort of a good investor, and he's a libertarian, and he lives down in I can't think of the name of the country now, in South America. And he explained it really well. One of the benefits of being an expat I think he was calling them shithole countries or something like that, and I don't really agree that this is a shithole country, but maybe it's a sufficient explanation for his purpose. Being an expat in a place like El Salvador, you have an edge, and it's this unfair edge. Like, I get treated better than the locals. If I say to the policeman, sorry, I don't speak Spanish, like, he's just going to let me go. He's not going to hassle me. If I go to a pharmacy or if I'm in trouble, they'll help me more than if I was a local, because I'm just some silly gringo. Like, they think of us as, Doug was saying, that they think of him and they think of us expats as a bit of a novelty, and a bit of a harmless novelty. He's the silly gringo, so we look after him. So it actually gives you this edge. And another edge you have as an expat in countries like these is that you actually are more worldly. Like, most people here haven't ever left the country, or they've only been to Guatemala. So yeah, we just have automatically, because we've grown up in such a privileged country, we're a bit more worldly, and that can give us an edge in business or whatever. So that was an interesting thing that I hadn't really sort of heard explained, and I've seen it play out, like that. If I was in trouble here, I'd get looked after better than a local would. Yeah.
Because you're the right kind. I don't mean this personally, but that you're seen as the right kind of expat. Like, if you're an Algerian in France, for example, different story, right? Oh,
maybe. I don't even know about that. I just think maybe that's human nature is just sort of to help visitors. No, I think just about any expat here, to be honest. And there would be some exceptions where it's specific countries where because of how you look, you might not be welcome. But maybe because I look like a bit European, and so do most of the locals. But I didn't mean that. I just because you're a guest and they're not sick of tourists yet here, they haven't had many, so they're sort of, you're just a bit of a novelty, and you're not harmful. They're not worried about you. They'll look after you.
And you're probably seen as, I mean, whether right or wrong, you're probably seen as somebody who is, if you've made the trip there, you've obviously had the means to make that trip, so you probably have the means to spend some money in their shop, or spend some money in their restaurant, or spend some money whatever, and then, so, you're a potential customer. And if you're a potential customer, you probably and they want to make a buck here, and it's great. Right. Like, they're sort of naturally more conservative in that way. Like, everyone wants to make a buck. That's fine. But I haven't had anyone try to scam me here, compared to traveling in Thailand or something, where you just every day in Bangkok someone tries to scam you, and sometimes very creative scams. I haven't had that here at all, like not once. But they'll still make a buck out of you if they can. But so they're sort of the entrepreneurial, and want to make some money, and naturally conservative, and maybe that's the Catholic background. They're very strong on family values here, which I love. And there's generally less
I mean, I've tried to explain woke culture to some locals, and they just do not even understand what the hell I'm talking about. And
What
there's
do
a
you
little
mean?
bit of it here, like,
Right, can you explain it to
all
me,
this,
please? Because
all this horse shit, this like over the top political correctness and inclusivity and the transgender stuff and all of this nonsense that's just going overboard, giving kids puberty blockers and all this horse shit that seems to be mostly coming out of the United States, which is weird. There's a bit of it here, and climate change fanaticism, but not much. And if you try to explain it to sort of people here, they're just, well, there'll be the odd sort of crazy feminist climate. Not many here. They eat a lot of meat, and they love having a good time, and they love time with the family, and they like making some money. And so, yeah, it's generally just this conservative culture, which is really enjoyable coming from Australia.
I don't necessarily think the organisations and institutions even want to be on board with it. I don't think they believe it. I think they just go, oh,
we get cancelled if we don't.
Well, either that, or there's an opportunity to make money out of people who we can manipulate. They don't. It's not like Nike. We're sitting one. Maybe that's a bad example, but let's take a Nike or something. Let's take Nike. We're sitting one day going, I know what we're going to do. This is what we really believe in. They're not doing that. They're judging cultural changes and going, oh, huge opportunity if we do this. If we, all of a sudden we have a rainbow flag pair of trainers. Like the rainbow flag, this is Gazelle McCormack, which I've actually don't want to get involved in, but like that actually originally had a purpose, that flag, and now it's just been taken over by everybody who's wanting to make a point, virtue signal something, right?
Yeah, just this virtue signaling madness is just over the top, and a sort of mob. Yeah, for fear of being mobbed, and you have to appear to be more virtuous than the next person, and if you don't quickly put the Ukraine flag in your bio, then you're not a good enough person. It's just this weird, I don't know what's going on, and this seems to be a hell of a lot less of it here, because they got bigger problems, man. Like they just come out of.
Well, we all do. It's just
they finally put the gang members in jail. They had decades of civil war. People are getting lifted out of poverty every day. So, and it's the same for the government here. It's just like in terms of fewer rules and regulations. Like my motorcycle doesn't have number plates yet. It's not in my name yet. It doesn't matter, especially if I say to the policeman, sorry, I don't speak Spanish. It's just like nobody cares, man. Like they got bigger problems and they're working on them. And so you're less likely to get hassled by the government, because they're busy putting murderers in prison rather than just trying to hassle us innocent folk. So that's good fun.
Fresh air, man. It must be a breath of fresh air just being there.
It really is. And little things like I was saying, I'm riding my bicycle around town and there's no problem, except on the sort of bigger, the more major roads, I kind of have to avoid them, but they have overpasses you can walk over. And I initially thought, is it going to be safe to have a bicycle? And bicycles are one of the things that are more expensive here, actually quite a bit more expensive. I just got a base model hardtail mountain bike and it was like 50% dearer than it would have been in Australia. I don't know why, but I was sort of wondering about security with the bike and whether I would lock it up and so on. But if I go to a cafe or a shopping centre or a restaurant, every single cafe or shopping centre or restaurant has a security guard standing there with a 12 gauge.
Yeah.
And you just say, buenos dias, and they go, oh, bicicleta, sí, bueno. And they look after your bike. Like they will look after your bike, and they've got a shotgun. Like it is perfectly safe. It's fantastic. It's just no one's going to do anything wrong in San Salvador, especially to a gringo, especially with every corner there's a guy with a shotgun. It's perfect. It's fantastic. It's a good system.
So what's the plan for you sort of from here? Are you going to kind of try to find some Bitcoin work over there? Are you going to try to, start something up, or?
I definitely want to get I've got a couple of business ideas. I definitely want to get the beef supply going here, because that seems to me there's a big gap, especially for beef. I found good eggs and good chicken and even some good farmed fish, which is interesting. But getting good beef is basically impossible at the moment. So that's one business idea. I mean, I want to do it for myself anyway, and I might actually do it as a business if I can, a profitable business. So getting grass-fed beef properly processed and aged. You can occasionally get good local, because most of the beef's imported from Nicaragua, or if you want to spend some more, it's imported from the US, but it's all crap. It's all feedlot beef that's loaded with antibiotics and growth promotants, and then they pack it in brine, which includes sugar and salt and enzymes which make it tender. It's very tender because they put enzymes in the brine. Jesus. And preservatives. It's just like horrible.
Just for shelf life, basically.
Yeah, and tenderness, and I guess flavor. But you can taste that it's just really sweet and really salty. It tastes like horrible. So they do have. You can get local beef at the supermarket, but it's not. It's just never aged. It's always way too fresh. It's really, really chewy. So I'm just slowly going to try to find some good farms and see if there's an opportunity to put together a supply chain to get some good grass-fed beef, especially down to Bitcoin Beach and to the expat community, but also the locals, the middle-class locals, and the restaurants. But I'm also really keen to do a heap of motorcycling here. So that's something that they're really keen on motorcycling here. There's an enduro race like every few weeks, and cool. So I've got my bike set up, and I'll be doing some little day trips and adventure rides. I've got a big ride coming up tomorrow, which I'm a bit nervous about, but with some local guys. It's just so easy to meet people, and they're so welcoming. They're like, "Oh, you got an enduro bike? Come for a ride, or come for dinner." It's really nice. So yeah, that I'm continuing to do some work in the certified organic industry in Australia remotely, but unfortunately the Aussie dollar keeps getting lower and lower. So I don't know if working for Aussie dollars is going to be a great idea longer term. So I'll try to get an income here, and maybe it'll be in food supply, or maybe it'll be in motorcycle tours, or maybe something else will come up. Like I was just looking at you just meet people every day here that are entrepreneurs in Bitcoin related space, or privacy or freedom oriented, all sorts of entrepreneurs, expats and locals. I was just having a look at the Adopting Bitcoin schedule, and it's just like there are so many people coming. It's going to be fantastic. So who knows what opportunities might pop up.
Names or just topics you're interested in, like people you're aware of, or
yeah, both. Like I'm really keen to listen to meet Paolo Arduino from Tether, and I mean there's just heaps. You got to check it out. Check out the Adopting Bitcoin conference schedule online now. There are 6 different streams over 3 days, I think, or maybe day 3 is just a visit to Bitcoin Beach, I think. So yeah, 6 different rooms over 2 full days.
Right.
Is Bukele going to make an appearance?
There is talk. I haven't looked in detail at the schedule yet. I don't think he's necessarily on the schedule. There's talk about whether he might make a big announcement, which, there's hope that he might be making an announcement about the volcano bonds, but I'm not sure if that's likely to happen.
Yeah.
But I think he'll probably come, as long as nothing else, no shit hits the fan anywhere else. He's just doing a great job lately, I think. Like, he's kicking goals on the world scene. It's so cool to watch.
Yeah.
Did you see his presentation to the UN General Assembly? And did you see what he said on his way out there? Said, "Mr. President, are you excited about seeing President Biden's speech?" And Bukele says, "Not really." And then he said, "We all have to come here and we do a speech, and they're all pretty boring speeches, really. So, no, I'm not that excited."
Oh, brilliant.
That's amazing.
Just
right?
It's amazing how refreshing some guy who tells the truth is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's so rare.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What's the date of that? Do you know when the
I do. I've got it right here. Is it the 17th? It's in like 2-3 weeks. So November 15th.
15th.
So yeah, and then just a few days later, there's Pacific Bitcoin in LA. But I'm not going. I was thinking about maybe going, but the tickets are really expensive, and I think it'll be a bit glitzy anyway. I think the real conference,
and then the big one,
down
the big
here.
one on the 25th, 26th is back in Murrurundi.
Oh yeah, that's right. The really big one is
video
Bitcoin
link or
Bush Bash in Murrurundi. Yeah, I'm sad to be missing that. Yeah. So you guys are both going?
Oh,
Yes.
shit, yeah. I just actually got a message then too about today's one saying you guys going to Newcastle because there's a meet up in Newcastle. First meet
it's
up in
great to
Newcastle
see.
today. So
It's awesome. And I also see that Australian Beef Initiative stuff is starting to happen, and Texas Slim's going to come for a visit over there. So
Yeah,
I'm a
pretty
bit
cool.
torn about that. That would have been great to be involved in.
It's there's just so many things. You've been around long enough where you used to be scrabbling around for things to do, and things to read, and things to look at, and now it's just like you just can't do everything.
Can't
There's
keep
too
up.
much.
Yeah.
There's too much. You just have to let people go off of their own little tangents and then hear about them from somebody else.
Yeah, you can't be everywhere, but it's just great to see. Yeah, and even now, like with the price having pulled back so far, it's just there's so much momentum in the community. It's not stopping. It's great.
Well, I'm really looking not for obviously price increase is good, but or it feels good, but I'm really looking forward to it. So you can then because El Salvador is just a living case study that everybody can watch and criticize if they want, if they find the easy point of criticism. But when the price starts to run, that's going to be really hard to criticize, right? They're going to look like absolute geniuses, and I don't think it's that far away. And you can imagine Bukele's speeches then. It's going to be wonderful, right? It's but and obviously just for the people in El Salvador, the normal everyday people, when they just start to see the benefit for themselves, it's just going to be great.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for and for you to be on the ground and be able to witness that firsthand is going to be fun, I would imagine.
Yeah, shit, yeah.
You're a full-time correspondent over here, but yeah, come and visit sometime, boys.
Well,
I'll roll out the red carpet for you.
That'd be cool.
I'd love to. Make sure you speak to the president's mum. We would like to meet her. Brenda will bring some flowers.
Yeah. All right, mate. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me again. Great to talk to you.
No,
as always.
we'll
If you have any questions about what's happening here, just reach out on Twitter. I'm Beefback Better on Twitter, so my DMs are open. So if you have any specific questions about El Salvador, the main thing is it's so safe. It's just not an issue. It's perfectly safe, and getting around the city is great. It's a great city to live in, even if your Spanish is not perfect, but worth having a bit of Spanish if you can. I did want to do a couple of shout outs. So there's just a new little place called Bitcoin Landing Spot that's just opened. It's just up the road from me, it's kind of like a hostel and co-working space. It's a bit of a weird mix, but if you need somewhere to go for your first few nights or your first week, you need accommodation, check out Bitcoin Landing Spot. It's very cheap and it's sort of hostel style. It's got a shared kitchen, but they've got a pool there, and there'll be Bitcoin meetups.
That's such a good
every
idea.
few days.
Yeah.
And they're building a podcast studio. So there you go. You guys can come and do an episode from there.
There you go.
2-bit tour.
And if you're interested in residency, I almost don't want to encourage too many people to come here because it's like perfect now. It's my paradise. Like I can ride my motorbike anywhere. I do wheelies up the street. I can, it's my paradise. But no, if you do want to come there, and you're interested in residency, I just had a look, and there's actually 17 different residency options. And there's a fellow here that's helping me with my residency application, and he is Escape to El Salvador. I think his Twitter handle is actually El Salvador Visas, but his name is Escape to El Salvador, and you can pay him a few $1,000s, and it's like white glove service. He'll just take you through the whole process.
Awesome.
Especially if you don't.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I interrupted you.
Yeah. Right.
And all I was going to say was, is it like residency by investment or anything, or is it just that there is a residency process that you can take you through and you just pay for the service?
There are 17 different types of residency visas. Some of them can lead to citizenship. The one that I'm choosing is I don't know if they call it that officially, but it's known as the digital nomad visa. You kind of just have to declare that you've got income from overseas. And it doesn't even have to be that much. And so you get a 90-day visitor, just visa on arrival for 90 days. You have to have a return ticket home, but you can just cancel that. You just book it and cancel it like everyone does. And you get 90 days. And within that 90 days, if you make an application for residency, you immediately get a 90-day extension. So that's 180 days. And you can then get a 1 year from that. If you're successful, you get a 1 year temporary, and then you can get a 1 year extension, and then you can get permanent.
Gotcha.
And you can get all that for a few $1,000. That's incredible. So, well, so far so good. Let's see how I go. There's some groundwork you should do before you leave your home country in terms of police background checks, and there's all this jargon and process and consulate this and that. So it is worth doing a little bit of prep before you leave your country, or you may have to go back again to get paperwork. But yeah, that's why Jeremy at Escape to El Salvador is, and there are other people offering that service too, but he's a Bitcoiner. He's a solid Bitcoiner, an open source guy, and libertarian free city project kind of guy. So you'll get along with him well as well. And he and also Bitcoin Landing Spot offer, you can use their mailing address. So if you want to send boxes of stuff over ahead of time, then it's getting easier and easier to do from the little mistakes that we're all making as we do it now. It'll just keep getting easier. So you'll have fewer and fewer excuses.
It just sounds like the start of kind of governments competing as service providers.
Yeah.
Right? And because why would you not, like, let's say you've made a little bit of cash in whatever your home country is, and you want to go live somewhere that's more open, but you're going to spend all the cash that you made, or some of the cash that you made where you're from, in that country. That's just makes sense to welcome those people with open arms.
Yeah, totally.
All right.
Yeah, it seems to be the only government in the world at the moment that's doing anything sensible. So it's nice to be here to witness it.
Cool. All right, mate.
Start, mate. That's a start.
Yeah. Cheers again, buddy.
Great to speak to you, man.
Likewise. Catch you again.